I'm Mark Irons. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly. Going, gone. It is Elon Musk's last official day as a White House advisor. How far is he going from the nation's capital? Morally treacherous. Lawmakers in New York are considering a bill to legalize assisted suicide, and Cardinal Timothy Dolan is speaking out. Family get-together. Tens of thousands of pilgrims gather in Rome for an event to honor parents, children, and the elderly. Plus, check this out. A major announcement about the Vatican Library and tens of thousands of ancient manuscripts. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the Feast of St. Joan of Arc. Our top story tonight. The world's most powerful man, President Donald Trump, holds a news conference today with the world's richest man, Elon Musk, to discuss the end of Elon's temporary and controversial role as chief cost cutter. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
That's right, Mark. Musk is leaving his job as a senior advisor and getting back to his many businesses, including Tesla and Starlink and X. And that news, just one of several headlines coming out of the Oval Office earlier today.
President Donald Trump praises Elon Musk for his work.
Elon gave an incredible service, nobody like him, and he had to go through the slings and the arrows, which is a shame because he's an incredible patriot.
The president then presented Musk with a gift.
But it goes to very special people, and I thought I'd give it to Elon as a presentation from our country.
Well, let me say perhaps a few words. That this is not the end of Doge, but really the beginning.
Musk, early in the administration, put the spotlight on Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency.
If we don't do something about this deficit, the country's going bankrupt.
Supporters praised the group's efforts to cut waste, fraud, and abuse.
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy.
But opponents said the chainsaw approach went too far and cut essential programs and services. Today's news conference didn't just focus on Musk. Another topic, tariffs and the back-and-forth court battles.
The tariffs are so important, and that's why we were so happy with the decision yesterday, because without the tariffs, our nation would be imperiled.
Also brought up, peace efforts. Israel has accepted a new U.S. proposal for a temporary ceasefire with Hamas.
Well, they're very close to an agreement on Gaza, and we'll let you know about it during the day or maybe tomorrow, and we have a chance of that. And I think we have a chance of making a deal with Iran also. They don't want to be blown up. They would rather make a deal, and I think that could happen in the not-too-distant future.
Also, President Trump flew to Pennsylvania for a rally to celebrate a deal for Nippon Steel to invest in U.S. Steel based in Pittsburgh. The plan, he says, will keep the American steelmaker under U.S. control. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Joining us now to discuss more of this, Damian Bradley, Vice President of Research for the National Taxpayers Union Foundation. Damian, looking on those efforts of Doge since the Trump administration began, how do you assess the cuts that have been made thus far?
They've done a really good job of going through federal programs and identifying waste and getting rid of a lot of contracts, expensive contracts that the agency has for services that really aren't justifiable. So a lot of work on that front, but we really need Congress to step through and make sure that a lot of these savings get codified into law.
Well, President Trump says he wants to make the Doge cuts permanent. What would that look like in the long term? Is it possible?
Yes, it is very possible. So I think just next week, President Trump is going to submit a rescissions package to Congress, which will the first of many that are expected, and it's going to cut $9.4 billion in spending from the USAID, the International Aid Program, and from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which funds programs like PBS and NPR. Those are the first rescissions packages that are expected, and Congress will have 45 days to pass that with a simple majority vote. And then more rescissions bills are expected. And then President Trump and Congress will be working on the next year's fiscal budget, which will present another opportunity to lock in a lot more of these savings.
We're also hearing Elon Musk says he still expects over $1 trillion in savings to result from the work of Doge. Is that possible? Does that math sound right to you?
Well, that's over the long term, and that's going to require a sustained effort from future administrations and from lawmakers in Congress to hold the line on spending. Right now, the federal debt is upwards of $36 trillion, and the forthcoming reconciliation bill, which is going to put in some great tax cuts for everybody, is also going to have to raise the debt ceiling. So, once we get that passed into law, the number one priority in Congress and in the White House ought to be reining in the federal spending.
And we know that Musk has made critical comments on the so-called big, beautiful bill working its way through the Senate. Could that bill offset any progress made by DOGE?
Only to the extent that we don't follow up and make sure that the tax cuts are responsibly enacted going forward, because the government has been spending too much for over a century, and that's why we've accumulated this $36 trillion federal debt level. So we need to find more ways to cut federal spending. That's the main problem. We're overspending, and people should be allowed to keep more of what they earn, and then the government is too big and it spends too much.
Damian, and to recap, what has Elon Musk achieved during his time in the White House, in your opinion?
The number one thing that they did is just bring a new mindset to federal agencies. And it's interesting because Trump turned the U.S. Digital Services into DOGE, and the U.S. Digital Services was initially created by Obama, and it was his plan to go through the federal budget and try to create savings for agencies, but nothing really amounted to it. But Elon Musk has transformed that agency, and they brought a fresh perspective to other federal agencies to find new ways of doing things and find efficiencies for taxpayers.
Well, Damian Brady, we thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Big changes are coming to the U.S. State Department. Secretary of State Marco Rubio unveiled a massive overhaul of the agency. It marks the latest effort by the Trump administration to reset U.S. foreign policy and scale back the size of the federal government. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us with the latest. Eric?
Good evening, Mark. Secretary of State Marco Rubio took a big step in reorganizing the State Department by officially informing Congress of his plan. It comes less than 2 weeks after the Secretary's congressional testimony previewed that sweeping changes and cuts were on the horizon.
We have to have a State Department that can deliver on a foreign policy that is rooted in the national interest of the United States. To defend the national interest of the United States requires us, number one, to make sure that every dollar we spend and every action we take has to have measurable outcomes that deliver for the American people.
But Democrats say the plan will do more harm than good.
I think you proposed an 84% budget cut, plans for widespread diplomatic closures, laying off staff across the board. I don't see how any of those things really makes us stronger and delivers for the American people.
Secretary Rubio's plan takes aim at a number of programs, such as cut more than 300 domestic offices, affecting about 3,400 employees, eliminating most offices in the Human Rights Division, cutting staff by 80%, and create new positions that align with President Trump's policies. The plan does not detail foreign embassy closures or consolidations. Democrats accuse the administration of weakening America's role on the global stage. Senator Jeanne Shaheen, the lead Democrat on the Foreign Relations Committee, said in a statement she would scrutinize the proposed reorganization and its compliance with federal law. Quote, the lack of transparency to date only underscores that they know this process has been deeply flawed. Other Democrats see a dangerous pattern.
Marco Rubio has not been the independent voice that we were hoping that he would be. I think that, for instance, when USAID is completely demolished and, Marco Rubio basically seems to put a rubber stamp on it, that's a big problem.
Recently, the White House Budget Office proposed huge cuts to the State Department, including eliminating funding for the United Nations and NATO headquarters. The Secretary's plan could face a lot of pushback from both sides of the aisle. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Eric. Inflation slowed in the U.S. last month, with consumer prices rising just 2.1%, the lowest rise since last September. This as overall consumer spending rose at a much lower rate in April than it did in March. Economists say the slowdown in spending could reflect some early caution on the part of consumers. Meanwhile, incomes rose a healthy 0.8% in April. At least 11 people, including 2 children, are injured after another wave of attacks in Ukraine. The country's second largest city, Kharkiv, was attacked today. The port city of Odessa also came under fire. This comes a day after the U.S. told the UN Security Council that it may step back from peacemaking if the attacks continue. Moscow says it has invited Ukraine to resume peace talks in Istanbul on Monday. We have a lot more still to come on EWTN News Nightly, including doctors and the church. Cardinal Timothy Dolan pushes back against New York's attempt to legalize assisted suicide, and a report from Rome on a celebration of the family. The Trump administration is launching an inquiry into hospitals that have provided transgender drugs and performed transgender surgeries on minors. Dr. Mehmet Oz sent a letter this week to certain hospitals asking if they were in compliance with new guidelines from the Department of Health and Human Services. The letter also asked hospitals to acknowledge any adverse events related to these procedures. Oz says the treatments are irreversible and high-risk procedures being conducted on vulnerable children, often at taxpayer expense. Lawmakers in New York are considering a measure to legalize assisted suicide. The proposal passed the House last month. Democratic state senators are weighing if they have the support to move it to a vote, and church leaders are speaking out. In an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, Cardinal Timothy Dolan from the Archdiocese of New York says he is stunned that lawmakers are on the verge of legalizing suicide. Cardinal Dolan also writes in part, quote, "Our government will marshal all its resources to save the life of one hopeless and despondent man. Yet it may conclude that some lives aren't worth living, and we will hand those despondent women and men a proverbial loaded gun." And the author of that piece, Cardinal Timothy Dolan, joins us now. Your Eminence, thank you for being with us. First off, why did you write the piece, and what has the response been?
Well, Mark, I'm the one who's grateful to you for inviting me to be on. I'm just glad somebody else reads the Wall Street Journal besides me. Thank you. No, it's we're at a critical moment here in New York, and I've learned the hard way that very often, sometimes it's good that New York sets the tone for the rest of the country. Sometimes it's not so good, and this would be one of those times, because once again, our legislature, sadly, is rushing towards passing this physician-assisted suicide. And darn it, I'm not going to give up in trying to point out the error in this. This is so sad, you know, in that we're continuing towards what Pope St. John Paul II, and by the way, what Pope Benedict and Pope Francis also termed the culture of death, that we're moving towards a cheapening and a diminution of human life. Now it's those who are sick. Now it's those who are struggling. Now it's those who are aged, who now will be given the right to say, hey, I want to end my life. I want you to kill me. Life is not worth living. Please, I want to die. Please help me do it. This is not good. I mean, from a philosophical point of view, Mark, what we're doing is saying that we're judging the sanctity and the dignity of human life by its utility, by its practicality. If something is looked upon as useless, if something is looked upon as no longer serving a need in society, well, darn it, we get rid of it. It's inconvenient. That's what Pope Francis called the throwaway culture. And this is only the most recent blatant example of that, in that people who, yes, they might be in some pain, they might be towards the end of their life, but darn it, we need to rally around and help them, and to ease the pain and to be with them with love and compassion, and not to say, hey, you're right, your life is worth ending. Let us not try to help you and talk you out of it. Let us help you give in to what are very morbid effects of taking your life. We don't need this. We don't need this. Now, I have to say, Mark, I'm not surprised, because this is the runaway train of the culture of death. We've got that the baby, the innocent, fragile baby in the womb, is no longer safe in the sanctuary of a mother's womb. And now we go to the other side, to those near death. They're saying, well, let us help you. This is inconvenient. This is not good. Let us get rid of this life. And that's not the way a civil society acts.
Assisted suicide advocates say this is a secular issue and should not impact the religious. How would you respond?
Well, it's a secular issue. You bet it is. It's a cultural issue. It's an issue of human rights. Does life itself inherently have the right to continue and be respected and not to be taken? So it's a human rights issue. It is a secular issue. Many of the people against it, they don't cite their religion, they don't cite their faith, they don't cite their creed for being against it. No, they cite the tremendous turmoil that will happen if this awful legislation becomes law. Again, I'm not surprised by this because New York has sadly been on this track for a while.
We all need to keep praying. Cardinal Timothy Dolan, thank you for being with us.
Appreciate it, Mark. Thanks for asking.
And it's not just religious leaders who are sounding the alarm. Patients' rights advocates are also speaking out against the proposal in New York, with one saying the proposal is bringing together people with fairly different viewpoints.
In places where this does pass, it is a very slim margin. There's no great outcry for this kind of legislation. It's not a popular bill. It does face bipartisan opposition in every state.
Jessica Rogers adds that New York Governor Kathy Hochul has not publicly said if she supports the measure, only that if it reaches her desk, she will consider it. Rogers says she is working to make sure that it doesn't reach the governor's desk, in part because assisted suicide has such a negative impact on the relationship between doctors and patients.
It puts incredibly vulnerable patients at risk who feel like they're a burden on their friends or their family, or who are having challenges accessing the services that they need in order to thrive. Right now in New York, there's a lot of debate over funding issues for people with disabilities, and the legislature can't even agree on that.
The 16th major Jubilee event kicked off today in Rome, the Jubilee of Families. EWTN Vatican journalist Valentina Di Donato spoke to pilgrims in St. Peter's Square that have traveled to the Eternal City to celebrate the family.
Over 60,000 people from 120 different countries are expected this weekend here in Rome for the Jubilee of Families, children, grandparents, and the elderly. Thousands kicked off the Jubilee with pilgrimages to the holy doors of Rome's iconic papal basilicas, filling the streets with prayer and joy.
It's a family tradition. Today, I came to bring my daughter through the holy door for her first time, and I hope that this tradition continues and that one day she will do this with her own children.
Since I was a child, they teach me, everything in the family is very, very, very important. But this is my family, but that one is my family too.
The aim of the Jubilee is to celebrate and strengthen families, recognizing the unique roles played by children and grandparents.
For us Nigerians, it's a time to get the whole family together as one. Catholics in Nigeria today celebrate the year for grandparents, families, and this is actually uniting all of us in love. The church is preaching love. The parents are important, grandparents are important, the grandchildren are important, the family is important to us.
Numerous dioceses, associations, and movements will also be represented. Among them is the Children's Rosary, a lay prayer movement, an effort to begin rosary prayer groups in parishes composed of and led by children. Promoted by the Dicastery of Laity, Family and Life, the movement, which started in Connecticut, has now spread to 45 countries. And the hope is to encourage not only families to pray together, but to teach children to pray from a young age.
It's a real gentle way to grow in those virtues. It's so hard to raise holy children today that we need to seek the help of our Blessed Mother, and she wants to help us. And so if we bring our children and our families together in prayer of the Rosary, this is what happens.
The Church has also been very attentive to families, to their formation and their integration into society as a fundamental nucleus. In an interview with EWTN, Cardinal Willem Jacobus Eijk emphasized the importance of families being united in prayer.
I think what is very important family, that is common prayer. Praying together, before the meal, after the meal, at the beginning of the day, by the end of the day, like we did in the past. And that, of course, will help young children to form a personal relationship with Christ. That will give them a Christian formation, a Christian education, and therefore you give them a very solid fundament for the future life.
Ahead of the families present in Rome are 3 full days of events and attractions punctuated by moments of prayer, reflection, celebration, and sharing. And on Sunday, Pope Leo will preside over Holy Mass in St. Peter's Square, which will see the participation of thousands of children and families from all over the world.
In Rome, Valentina Di Donato for EWTN News Nightly.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, it's a tradition stretching back nearly 1,000 years. We'll show you where thousands of the faithful gathered to celebrate the Ascension in a unique way. Plus, thousands of documents at the Vatican Library could soon be in your fingertips. We'll explain. It's a tradition stretching back hundreds of years, and it's still going strong in Belgium. These images come to us from Bruges, where they celebrated their annual procession of the Holy Blood. It happens every year on the Feast of the Ascension and began in the year 1304 as an expression of faith and gratitude. The theme is the remembrance of the suffering of Christ. More than 1,800 people took part in the celebration. In Rome, an ambitious project is underway to make tens of thousands of documents in the Vatican Library more accessible. Ancient manuscripts housed in the library are in the process of being digitized. These manuscripts include things like Botticelli's illustrations of the Divine Comedy and a unique copy of Cicero's Republic. The digitization will make it easier for scholars from across the world to access the documents remotely. And finally tonight, Catholic leaders from around the country recently gathered at an event supporting a classical homeschool hybrid academy for Catholic families. The gala focused on parental rights in education. EWTN's Francesca Fenton has more.
Lay Catholic leaders from across the country, including 3-time Super Bowl winner Harrison Butker and entrepreneur podcaster Michael Knowles, gathered for an evening that put parental rights at the forefront of the K-12 classical school movement. Hosted by the Regina Caeli Academy, last week's Courage Under Fire Gala featured several Catholic keynote speakers, including Bible in a Year's Father Mike Schmitz and talk show host Matt Walsh, among others. The Regina Caeli Academy is an accredited pre-K-12 classical homeschool hybrid academy for Catholic families located in multiple cities across 17 states in the U.S. Butker serves on the board for the Regina Caeli Academy. He calls the program a beautiful model.
I really do believe that if more children are made aware of Regina Caeli and more parents are empowered to be the primary educators, so much so that they become the actual main educators and do that through homeschooling, I think we will see a big change in our society for the better.
A recent study from the Johns Hopkins School of Education showed homeschooling on the rise in 19 states. Many experts in education note the rise is due to a redesign in homeschooling that promotes co-op or hybrid models like the one at Regina Caeli. Dina and Tony Heller have 4 kids who attend the academy. The family is in their 3rd year homeschooling their children.
It's just so nice to be able to send them in for 2 days, have, the school experience, and then still have our kids at home. I mean, it's just like we feel like we get the best of both worlds.
I really like the fact that we are a major driver in the education. With Dina doing 3 days at home, and we're obviously following the curriculum, but we are really in control of the education in a large part.
Father Mike Schmitz served as the keynote speaker for the gala and offered parents some advice regarding things to consider when making decisions about their children's education.
And I think that when parents are aware that we have well-intentioned people in a lot of different environments who aren't necessarily advocates of truth, as we understand it, objective truth, then a lot of bad ideas can get in and infect our minds and hearts. And so even to be aware of that goes a long way.
While the increase is a hopeful sign for many, declining birth rates continue to ring an alarm for many. The same Johns Hopkins study noted that while the overall number of homeschool students is on the rise, the total number of U.S. students in K-12 education is declining. Francesca Fenton, EWTN News Nightly.
We thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Mark Irons. Good night and God bless.